So glad you're with us on the Asset Preservation Hour. I'm Brad Johansson with Stuart Willis. As we move into it, it's that time for New Year's resolutions. I mean, if you're that kind of person. I never really followed through very well with my New Year's resolutions. I kind of wanted it to be, I don't know, a week-to-week, a month-to-month thing, and the change of the... Are you a New Year's resolution guy?
Well, you know what? I don't know. The buttons are a little tight here. You can see the stretch marks again.
Don't stretch
I don't know. Last year they were looking pretty good. I think I've put a few pounds on. So
this year you're going to make one?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's interesting. What are yours? Are we going to win another Emmy Award? What are we at, 23?
I just want to be around you. I think that's
how many Emmys do you have so far?
Why do you do this?
Come on, don't make it weird. Give me the number.
24.
24. There you go.
Very blessed.
25.
To be able
Let's go.
To be able to do that.
Let's go.
You and I probably need to go on a workout plan together. Should we do that?
I love it. No, look, it's interesting because when it comes to New Year's resolutions, I think it is an excuse to be able to, recalibrate where you are, right? I think it's important to make sure that we're in a position, because look, I just went to the gym. I started my New Year's resolutions early again. And what I said was my New Year's resolutions is, I want to stay alive. Look, we've been.
That's an excellent New Year's resolution.
It's pretty important, right?
Yes.
To stay alive. All this money doesn't matter if you're not alive to enjoy it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right?
Good New Year's resolution.
So how am I going to do that? Well, look, blood pressure went up a little bit this year as I was opening offices in Las Vegas and Denver. I mean, it was crazy, right?
It was crazy.
You know what? The response, thank you to the audience. I appreciate you. Just know that your response is a blessing to us and my family and our company and all of our employees. We've grown tremendously. But look, I want to be alive to enjoy it all. And, I went to the Mayo Clinic. Everything looks great, fantastic on all fronts. But they're like, hey, you can drop a couple more pounds. So I'm going to do it. But what I noticed is when I got back into the gym was the parking lot was absolutely empty, right? At the end of the year, it gets empty. Well, why? Because people no longer have that, that very important resolution. They forget about it, and then they start in January. You can't find a parking spot, but in the summer, end of year, it's empty. Here's the thing: we've got to keep those strong, and I think it's important to have resolutions, not just financial or fiscally here, physically, but also financially.
All right. In doing all of your office openings throughout those years, somebody is going to say, all right, at some point we need to sit back and relax. Is there anything with a New Year's resolution that says sit back, or are you in this resolution, especially financially, of saying this is a time we need to move forward specifically on what?
Yeah, so I think, look, at the top of your list should be those things that you've put off, right? What do you think that you need to do that you haven't done yet? I think number one on most people's list that haven't done things, it's estate planning, setting up a living trust, okay? And what we're doing for our clients, for our financial clients, is like I make a commitment to my clients that I will be there for your surviving spouse. I will be there for the kids. I promise you we'll be there. We've been in business. We celebrated our 26th year in business this year here in the Valley, and super proud of that. And we live up to our promises. But to live up to that promise, you need to have your affairs in order. You need to consider having a living trust if it's appropriate. And that's why we have our attorneys that we've been using forever to set it up. We set up trusts for under $1,000. It's not a profit center for us. It's meant to say, look, I don't want to hang out with your kids in probate court. And look, Brad, I hear about these wonderful kids that don't care about money. If you want to see the Jerry Springer show, come to my office during an estate settlement, because these wonderful kids.
You've triggered me on this as well, because I can't remember when I set this up. Yeah. I have one. Maybe it's a New Year's resolution for me that I need to update.
Is it current? I mean, are you giving money current to your? Are you?
I don't know what the situation is.
That's it. Double check. So if you've already set it up, make sure it's current. right? Whether it's with us or your attorney. And first of all, make sure you're dealing with an attorney when it comes to your living trust. That should be number one. There are places, living trust mills, that advertise cheap living trusts that literally are just trying to get access to your information. We only do trusts for our financial clients. So, we already have all that information. But a lot of people advertise $699 trust. They have it done with a legal document preparer. We are not comfortable with that at Asset Preservation. Everybody who sets up our trust are attorneys. They're estate planning attorneys. They know what they're doing. It's important because you do not want to risk your life's work with an inferior product.
You talk about risk. So we have been in that mode of 2023 for a lot of people was very good market-wise, unless you were dealing bond.
But remember,
okay,
when you're dealing with bonds, because at the end of the day, those are conservative investors. So when you think about the stock market, we're focused on the S&P 500, right? Listen, Warren Buffett says, don't hire a financial advisor. You just put all your money into the S&P 500. So we use it as a benchmark. People follow it. The S&P is slaughtered, done unbelievably well this year. Sorry, go on.
So the good thing is that you may have put it in a nice spot. What's our risk situation going into 2024 that we ought to be thinking about at year's end?
Yeah, I think, listen, at this time, there's a day left in the year. It's all weekend. Not much you can do, right? So what I do say is, going into 2024, what we can do is saying, are we allocated properly? Because look, a lot of the classical, companies that will give you different credentials, right? I'm not going to say them by name, but one of the most prestigious certifications for financial planners believes in a balanced portfolio, which means having equal amount of bonds and stocks or having the ratio that's appropriate for you. And historically, that's worked. So like a balanced portfolio is a 60-40 classical balanced portfolio. Well, that 60-40 is 60%, let's say S&P as a proxy, and then TLT or IEF, which are the iShares 7 to 10-year bonds or 20-year bond ETFs. And those 60-40 portfolios last year didn't do very well. And the year before, they got smoked even worse. And I think what's important to do is to put into context that times change, realities change, interest rate environments change. We were in one of the lowest interest rate environments in history in 2020. And from 2020 to the end of 2023, interest rates shot up until November. November, they obviously dropped. But I want to show you a chart through November here that's really interesting, and it's a 2-year view of the S&P 500. Okay. And if you look at that there, that blue line on the top is the S&P 500 through the beginning of November there, or actually midway through November of 2023. The S&P 500 was at 3.5%, right? That red line there is the ticker symbol IEF. It's the iShares. It's the iShares symbol for their ETF that is a 7 to 10-year Treasury bond. The green one is TLT. That's the 20-year Treasury bond. And if you look at what happened, if you were a conservative investor, you put your money into bonds in there, that outweighed everything, right? Call it flat on the S&P over 2 years, but you are down substantially if you're a conservative investor. And Brad, let me just tell you this. Conservative people got hit the hardest. People that could risk the least.
Trying to do the smartest thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they need to think about what they can do moving forward. And look, one of the things they did moving to safety is they said, okay, well, you know what? I want to make sure I'm protected. So anticipating interest rate increases or bond, or stock market, fluctuations, what they did over the last couple of years, 2-3 years, they bought indexed annuities, right? And they bought CDs and things like that. And listen, I think annuities have a place. They're not for everybody. They're not, some of the products are terrible. They've got all these built-in fees for lifetime income riders that I think are nonsense. But even if they did the right thing, some of the purchases made sense if you bought the ones without fees, even if they haven't made anything over the last couple of years. But here's the problem. They're not going to make anything moving forward because you bought them at these terrible interest rates. A lot of the underlying products or underlying performance of these annuities are bonds. And so if they are losing money in their bond portfolios, you're going to get base rated in this annuity. Your cap rates, your interest rates are all based on that. But here's the thing. Here's a lesson here going into the commercial. The lesson is when interest rates are low, you refinance your house. My wife wants to buy a big house now. She's like, Stuart, our kids are growing up. They're going to want to bring their wives and their kids eventually. Look, they're too young to get married. Let's get clear about that. If you have kids, I'm going to kill you. It's going to be a problem, boys. But eventually, you know, she wants to get a big house because I have a 3,000 square foot house. It's a fine house, nice house, but it's not a big house to have multiple people over, right?
What's your interest rate on that house?
It's 2.5% for 30 years, right? I'm never going to sell that house. So it's going to become a rental for me. So if I buy another house, we can't use that, right? So when interest rates are low, you refinance your house. When interest rates are high, it's time to refinance your retirement. Okay? And so if you ended up buying all these fixed products over the last couple of years, and oftentimes the people you buy it from, they ignore you because you get a big commission for selling it. They don't talk to you, or they pass you off to some phone room in Texas or some other state, and you lose touch with these people. If you have that relationship, if you bought those products over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and you've seen zeros and zeros and zeros, it may be time to refinance your retirement. So if you're concerned that you're taking too much risk in the market, you're too exposed to bonds, or maybe you bought annuities that aren't performing, then give us a call. We're offering you an absolutely free portfolio review. If you want to claim your free portfolio review today, make it your New Year's resolution to take action. Maybe you need to look at your living trust. Maybe you need to see your risk. Maybe you bought an annuity that doesn't make sense for you right now. Give us a call at 833-602-PLAN. That's 833-602-7526. Or even easier, pick up that phone, get off the couch now, click on that QR code, and that'll take you to our absolutely free portfolio review at assetpreservation.com. But you have to take action. Your New Year's resolution should take place today. Not tomorrow, because tomorrow never comes. I see people all the time that watch our TV shows, and they'll come in and they'll say, hey, I've been watching you for 2 years, 3 years on TV. I say, well, why did it take you so long to call? I don't know, man. I'm not the kind of guy that calls a TV show. It's okay. The who's who of Arizona is calling. Feel free. If you don't like me on TV, you're not going to like me in person, right? Don't call. I get it. Call Brad. Call Brad instead. I'll give you, what is your phone, Brad?
No, I think we'll stay with this phone number, Stuart, for now. We've got to take a break. We want to talk about some of the income choices that you need to make in a New Year's resolution. Trust me, you'll like Stuart. 833-602-7526. Asset Preservation Hour returns after this.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took a major hit.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the 4th worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. I'm Stuart Willis with Asset Preservation Wealth and Tax. If you have amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. We are in one of the greatest tax windows in history, so it makes sense to take advantage of this tax discount while you can with your partners in retirement. All of our expert advisors, CPAs, and enrolled agents are fiduciaries that specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, estate planning, and more. Plan your retirement right. Call right now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis.
So glad you're with us on the Asset Preservation Hour. I'm Brad Johansson with Stuart Willis, and we are talking New Year's resolutions. We're hoping that 2024 is spectacular for you, but that probably takes a little bit of planning financially, which is why we're here. We've gone through a bunch of things. I want to go into income choices, and I want to start with Social Security if we can, because there's plenty of concern about Social Security and whether or not this is something we should be concerned about. What's the safety of Social Security right now?
You know, that's a big question, and a lot of people, are watching the news. They're getting scared, and to some extent they should be. What scares me about Social Security is the fact that the way they look to replenish it. Okay, like when Social Security was created, just some context here. people were on average actuarially dead within a couple months of filing Social Security. So they would only live on Social Security for a year or two, or sometimes 6 months on average. The problem is people are living longer now, right? So Social Security is having a tough time.
Yeah.
But even the bigger pressure is that all of these baby boomers are now retiring, putting more and more and more pressure on on the program itself.
No question.
Right?
Which goes along with a $33+ trillion debt
Right.
that they've got to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, look, what did we spend? $9-10 trillion in COVID? It's nuts. And so at the end of the day, are there pressures on Social Security? No doubt. What really scares me about Social Security, and I said this about a year ago, I was watching a Senate hearing and Lindsey Graham and Bernie Sanders both agreed on something, and that scared me, right? Whenever they agree on something, I get scared. What they agreed on is that higher income folks don't need Social Security as much, okay? And so what to me is, that's a dog whistle saying, oh my gosh, they're coming for Social Security again. Now, remember, we heard that similar language in 1983, when President Reagan signed into law for the first time ever taxing Social Security. It was never meant to be taxed. Franklin Roosevelt said it would never be a revenue source for taxation. But believe it or not, it was Reagan that signed into law the first time.
That was the first time.
Right? And then Bill Clinton made it even more taxable in 1993. But here's the thing that should scare you. Remember, when they said we're going to tax the wealthy on Social Security,
Yeah.
what they said is if you have more than $44,000 of income as a couple, which is the wealthy, right? That's the wealthy at the time. Then up to 85% of your Social Security can become taxable as ordinary income, just like making money at work, like an IRA, for example, right? Well, do you feel wealthy at $44,000?
Come on.
Right?
Come on.
Right? That's the point.
It's ridiculous.
But you know why it sounds ridiculous to you now? Is because that number's never been adjusted for inflation. So when you look at today's dollars, if you would add a COLA adjustment to that number, it's about $115,000 in today's dollars. So now all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, 115, well, that's high income. Here's the point. Everyone wants to be rich. They just don't want to be considered rich by the IRS or the Social Security Administration, right?
Amen to that.
And what's also scary, I was watching one of the Republican debates, the primaries.
Yeah.
And Chris Christie, with his 0.5% of the American vote right
Careful now.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't care. Here's the thing. I'm going to get my hate emails and phone. Listen, I went to the most liberal school in the world. I went to Berkeley, right? And people, I came out a centrist, I'm kind of a McCain guy without,
All right.
without the McCain, arguments back and forth. I mean, I'm a centrist here, right-leaning centrist. But at the end of the day, you have to call it like it is, right? I want what's right for my clients. It's why I went back to, when I went back to Washington, D.C. in November of 2019 to argue on behalf of our clients for the Secure Act. We've done a bunch of that stuff. I argue for what's good for our clients. That's what I argue for. But anyways, Chris Christie, back to that, with his 0.5% of the vote, literally, I had to say it twice.
Yeah, had to say it twice.
I had to kick him. Get out of the race. What are you talking about, right? Chris Christie literally was saying that Warren Buffett shouldn't be receiving Social Security. Well, that's an easy target, right? Because it's who's got Warren Buffett money? Not many people watching.
Hold
Well,
on.
you know what's funny?
Maybe Warren Buffett's watching. That would be it.
It's funny. You never know who's watching the show. You never know who's going to call, because we have seen the who's who of Arizona
Yes, we
call
have.
our number. The
Yes.
meetings I have are extraordinary. But the point is that when they say Warren Buffett shouldn't be collecting it, that's the same thing they said in 1983 when they said that higher income folks don't need Social Security as much. It's the same thing Lindsey Graham and Bernie Sanders are saying. It's a dog whistle to say we are going to tax Social Security, okay? It's coming. So you need to have a tax plan to be ahead of the curve there. That's number one. That should be your New Year's resolution number one. Have a tax plan. But is it solid? Well, we think they're going to be taxing the wealthy, which means you need to be planning ahead of the game. Under the current law, they look, your IRAs, your 401ks, all this tax-deferred money you've put away is going to come to haunt you in the future when it comes time to Social Security, we believe. Because look, taxing income is very easy. They just look at your 1099s. They try to start taxing wealth and build back better in some of the iterations of that law. Of course, it failed. Was it 2019 or so? Because they wanted to tax wealth.
Right.
You can't reassess capital assets every year. It's just not. It's not real. It's goofy, right? But at the end of the day, Social Security is huge. When people come into our office, we see it's the most underplanned part of the retirement because they just take it for granted. They just file early, they file late. They just willy-nilly file, and they don't understand that when we see it. For a married couple, we're talking about between $1 million to $2.5 million of benefit for the clients that come into our office. They've never thought about it. They just automatically go and file because they don't understand the magnitude of it, how much it really means. People have saved $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in their retirement plans, and they want to think about that. Why are we planning the $1 million to $2 million of Social Security, Brad?
I don't know whether I have an answer for that because it doesn't make sense at this point.
Yeah.
Look, you talk about income sources, and I want to get to this before we run out of time. We go through a long period of accumulation phase, and people would like to do this once. I want to retire once and be done with it, that I've accumulated to this. Take me through the accumulation phase and what the transitions are going to be, because this is a long period.
Well, yeah. So to put into perspective, you have to understand the 3 stages. The first one is the accumulation stage. The second is the asset preservation stage. The third one is your income or decumulation stage. So when we start with accumulation, that is the let's go. We're full throttle. We're 100% equity. We go
decades on this.
We're decades of work, right? From the time you're 20 years old to the time you're 50 years old, let's say, or 55 maybe. That accumulation phase is extending now as people get,
Which may go to 60 or 65 for a lot.
It may. Everyone's situation is different. But that is a full equity, full throttle. When I see people in balanced portfolios at 20 years old, I just shake my head and say, come on, what are we doing here, right? You're taking yield off the table. And I'm telling you, people in their 401ks have no clue what they're in, right? The beauty is that if you're 59 and a half or older, and you have a 401k or a thrift savings plan, you are actually eligible in many cases to have that asset professionally managed in an IRA by a professional like asset preservation. We can talk about that later. But accumulation is going for it, just full throttle, full risk, etc. But as you start nearing retirement and you start to realize, hey, you know what? I'm getting close enough to having enough assets to retire. That's the asset preservation phase. That's when you take your foot off the throttle a little bit. I use this analogy all the time. My son used to race go-karts all over the world. He was one of the top drivers in the world for a number of years. We'd go and drive, we'd go to Florida or the Midwest to go do a race, and we'd have, heat or qualifying on Fridays, heat races on Saturday, and main event on Sunday. They'd race hundreds of laps to go win a race, but they didn't crash their car. They did well. On their victory lap, though, showing off to the crowd, they crash their car and mess up the whole car, right? After hundreds of good laps. It's the same thing in retirement. You don't want to crash your car on your victory lap. So as you get closer to retirement, you've got to start taking chips off the table. Don't crash your car in the victory lap like my goofy kid does, right? Sorry. I'm kicking him while he's down again.
He may have done it once.
Once or 10 times. So But after the asset preservation is the decumulation stage.
Okay.
Right? That's when you start taking income from your retirements. And everybody knows you're supposed to buy low, sell high. Everyone knows that in the market, right? Buy low, sell high.
That's what they tell us.
But here's the thing. What people don't realize is that your income phase, oftentimes you're selling. You're selling assets, whether they're growth assets or income assets. Oftentimes you have to sell to handle the kind of income that's required to sustain you in retirement. But if your income source is a source that is volatile, well, what happens if COVID hits again or the financial crisis and you still need income? You're not going to just eat dog food to survive it, right?
No, I will not be doing that.
If COVID happens again, I hope it doesn't happen again. I think I have a lifetime supply of toilet paper in my garage just to protect.
Good to know. There's a visual for you.
Right? But what you don't want to do is not enjoy retirement going into, sorry, man, I'm just on a roll here today.
You are on a roll.
You don't want to be in a position where you can't enjoy retirement, right? And look, if your goal is to impress your friends with your portfolios, that's one thing. If you want to squeeze the nectar out of life and really enjoy retirement,
Yes.
knowing that, look, if something happens, I'm still fine, then you need to have a cash flow plan that shows you that you'll be fine. We have some of the most sophisticated cash flow software on the planet where we can show you if you're taking too much risk, will your money last based on certain rates of return? Because you want to take the least amount of risk necessary to win at retirement. And remember, winning retirement is how you define it. It's not how I define it. Because winning to you may be, hey, look, I want the kids to get $2 million when I die. Or your other goal could be, no, I want to have the greatest possible retirement throughout our whole life. While we're young enough to enjoy and travel and do all those things, you want to be able to squeeze that nectar out of life, enjoy the world, enjoy it, because as we get older, people slow down. They can't do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to have that, you need to make sure that your income is safe and secure while other portions of your money are growing for the long term.
I'm seeing a lot of advertisements about interest rates and stuff. As we're talking about New Year's resolutions, give us something that we can really rest on as we move in on a New Year's resolution, interest rates, things that we should be doing as we move into 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, when it comes to your underlying investments, first you want to know what kind of risk you're comfortable with and see if you're taking that kind of risk, right? Have a professional analyze that, do a complete in-depth analysis, super important. But number two, make sure that your income source going into retirement is solid, that it doesn't have that variability. Like if your plan was to take your money out of bonds, right? That could be a problem. I showed you that graph from earlier that bonds have gotten smashed over the last couple of years. That could be a huge problem for you too. If it's to survive on some lifetime income annuity that you bought a few years ago and the interest rates are terrible, it's not making any money, remember this. Interest is what you make. Income is what you take. We focus on interest accumulation, growing that money so that it can continue to feed you over your lifetime, so that you have something to pass. So your life's work doesn't just go back to some insurance company, so it continues to perform. Consider refinancing your retirement, but you have to take action. If you're concerned that you don't have a plan that looks at all of these things, then give us a call at 833-602-7526. That's 602-PLAN. Even easier, pick up that phone, click on the QR code, make it your New Year's resolution to take action today. We're here to help, but you have to ask for it.
We hope 2024 is the greatest year you've had yet. Do something for yourself. Call now. We always appreciate you being with us. Thanks for being here. Celebrate into the beyond. We'll see you soon.